A story about dignity, power, and standing your ground. Picture this, 1963 Las Vegas. The most glamorous city in America. A place where fortunes are made and broken every single night. A place where the most powerful men in the country come to do business away from prying eyes. But something was about to happen that would shock the entire entertainment world. Dean Martin was the most beloved entertainer in America. He could sing like an angel. He could make you laugh until tears ran down your face. He was charming, successful, and seemingly untouchable. But he was about to be taught a lesson by someone who didn't understand the difference between power and dignity. What happened next wasn't just about one man's pride. It was about something bigger. The choice between humiliation and honor. And Dean Martin's response? It changed everything about how Hollywood viewed power itself. When power met its match. Dean Martin was sitting on top of the world in 1963. At 45 years old, he had everything a man could want. He was one of the highest-paid entertainers in Las Vegas. His records were #1 on the charts. Movie studios were fighting for his attention. He was married, had beautiful children, and lived a lifestyle that most people only dreamed about. But success in Las Vegas came with a price. That price was dealing with the men who really ran the city, the Mafia. The man who controlled the largest portion of Las Vegas in 1963 was Tony Marcello. Tony was different from other Mafia bosses. He wasn't interested in hiding in the shadows. He wanted to be seen. He wanted people to know that he was in charge. He wanted respect that came from fear, not from admiration. Tony Marcello had built his empire by understanding one thing: control. He controlled the casinos, the hotels, the entertainment, and the people who worked for him. Anyone who worked in Las Vegas knew that Tony Marcello was the real boss. Politicians answered to him. Entertainers answered to him. Even other criminals answered to him. And Tony had a problem with Dean Martin. The problem wasn't Dean's talent. The problem wasn't that Dean was taking business away from someone else. The problem was that Tony felt disrespected. It started small. Dean had missed a private dinner that Tony had invited him to. Not because he didn't want to go, but because he had a family emergency. His youngest daughter was sick, and he wanted to stay home with her. He sent a message explaining what happened. But Tony didn't see it that way. To Tony, an invitation was a command. Refusing a command was disrespect. And disrespect had to be answered. A week later, Tony invited Dean to another private event. This time at his mansion outside the city. Dean went, not wanting to make things worse. But when he arrived, he realized this wasn't a social gathering. This was going to be a test of power. The mansion was filled with Tony's associates. Men in expensive suits who looked mean and acted meaner. Waiters moved around serving expensive drinks and food. But there was an underlying tension that made everyone uncomfortable. Tony greeted Dean warmly at first. Too warmly. Dean knew immediately that something was wrong. "Dean," Tony said, embracing him. "My friend. My good friend. I'm so glad you could make it this time. I was worried you might have another family emergency." The way Tony said family emergency made it clear he didn't believe Dean. He said it like it was a lie. Like Dean had deliberately disrespected him. "Tony, it was a real situation," Dean said carefully. "My daughter." Tony held up his hand. Of course. Family is important. I understand. That's why I wanted to talk to you tonight. About family. About loyalty." Tony guided Dean into a private study. The room was impressive. Leather furniture, expensive art on the walls, and a view of the Las Vegas Strip twinkling in the distance. "You know what I value most?" Tony asked, pouring 2 glasses of expensive whiskey. "Loyalty. Not talent. Not looks. Not even money. Loyalty. The kind of loyalty where when I ask you to do something, you do it. When I invite you somewhere, you come. No excuses. No family emergencies." Dean felt his stomach knot. He knew where this was going. "You see, Dean, you're a talented guy. Very talented. The audiences love you. The money is great. But talent without loyalty? That means nothing to me." Tony sipped his drink. "I've helped you. Do you know that? I've made sure you had the best spots, the best pay, the best treatment. And how do you repay me? By blowing off my invitation." "Tony, I explained," Dean tried again. "You explained to someone else," Tony interrupted. "You didn't explain to me. You didn't show me the respect of coming here and telling me face to face. You sent a message. Like I'm someone who deserves less than your personal attention." Dean realized at that moment that no explanation would satisfy Tony. This wasn't about the dinner. This was about Tony reminding Dean who was in charge. "I want to make this right," Dean said carefully. "Tell me what I can do." Tony smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had just set a trap. The public humiliation that shook Hollywood. "What you can do," Tony said slowly, "is accept my invitation to perform at a special event I'm hosting tomorrow night. At the Sands. In front of everyone. Everyone important in this city. And you're going to do something special for me." "What kind of performance?" Dean asked, though he was already nervous. "You're going to perform like you've never performed before," Tony said. "You're going to sing my favorite songs. You're going to tell jokes about the people I want you to make fun of. And most importantly, you're going to publicly thank me. You're going to tell the audience that I'm the man who made your success possible. That without me, you'd be nobody." Dean's face felt hot. "Tony, I can't do that. The audience needs to believe what they see on stage. If I'm obviously doing something for someone's ego." "I don't care what the audience believes," Tony interrupted coldly. "I care what they know. I want them to know that you work for me, that you answer to me, that nothing you do happens without my permission." "Tony, that's not how it works. I'm an entertainer. My credibility with the audience is everything. If people think I'm just doing what someone tells me to do, then maybe you'll learn something about respect," Tony finished. "Tomorrow night. Sands Hotel. 8 o'clock. And Dean? Don't disappoint me again." The next evening arrived too quickly. Dean spent the whole day thinking about what he was being asked to do. He talked to his friends. He talked to his wife. Everyone told him the same thing. Just do it. It's one night. Get it over with. Don't make trouble with Tony Marcello. But Dean couldn't stop thinking about something that had happened weeks earlier. He thought about the night he'd stood up for Sammy Davis Jr. against another Mafia boss. He thought about how standing up for what was right had mattered. He thought about how he'd told Sammy that real respect came from doing what you believed in, not from going along with power. Now he was being asked to do the opposite. The Sands Hotel showroom was packed. The audience was excited. They'd come to see Dean Martin perform, and they expected the usual show. Great songs, funny jokes, and the charming personality they knew and loved. "Because someone asked me to do something I wasn't proud of," Dean said bluntly. "Someone asked me to publicly humiliate myself. To lie to all of you. To pretend that my talent and my success came from someone else's control instead of my own hard work." He pointed toward Tony's table. "I'm not going to do it, because I respect myself too much. And I respect you too much to insult your intelligence like that." The room erupted. Not in applause. In shock. People didn't defy the Mafia in public. People didn't do what Dean was doing. Tony's face turned dark red. His men started to stand up, but Tony held up his hand. He was watching Dean with an expression that was impossible to read. "You want to know something funny?" Dean said, his voice calm now. "Real power isn't about making someone do something they don't want to do. Real power is about being such a strong person that people actually want to listen to you. Real power is about earning respect instead of demanding it through fear." Dean looked Tony directly in the eye. "And I just realized something tonight. You don't have real power. Real power comes from inside. It comes from knowing who you are and being proud of it. And you don't have that. Because if you did, you wouldn't need me to tell you you're important. You'd know it." The audience was stunned. No one had ever spoken to a Mafia boss like this publicly. No one had ever been this bold. No one had ever been this brave. Dean walked off the stage. For a moment, nothing happened. The audience didn't know how to react. The band members looked scared. Security guards were frozen, waiting for orders. Then something unexpected happened. A woman in the audience stood up and started clapping. Just one person at first. Then another. And another. The applause grew. Not everyone joined in. Some people sat frozen in fear. But many people understood what had just happened. They understood that they'd witnessed something remarkable. They'd witnessed someone choosing dignity over safety. Tony Marcello sat at his table, not moving, not saying anything. His men looked at him, waiting for orders. But the orders never came. When respect trumped revenge. The next morning, Hollywood woke up to a story that seemed impossible. A story about Dean Martin standing up to a Mafia boss. A story about someone choosing self-respect over fear. The news spread like wildfire through the entertainment industry. What people expected was revenge. They expected to hear that Dean had been hurt, that his career was over, that he'd suffered the consequences of his defiance. But something else happened instead. The story reached the newspapers. Not the small local papers, but the major national newspapers and entertainment magazines. Reporters started asking questions. How could a mafia boss control entertainment if entertainers weren't actually controlled? What did it say about an industry that was supposed to be built on creativity and freedom if fear was really running it? The story also reached something important: other entertainers. Frank Sinatra heard what Dean had done. Frank, who had his own complicated relationship with power and the mafia, was impressed. He called Dean and told him he supported him completely. Peter Lawford heard the story. He called Dean and told him he was the bravest man he knew. Even entertainers who had to stay quiet because of their own situations with powerful men started finding ways to support Dean. They sent messages. They made sure Dean knew they were with him. But the most important thing happened when unexpected people started standing up as well. Business leaders who had been intimidated by mafia control started realizing something. If Dean Martin could stand up publicly, maybe they could too. Slowly, carefully, people started pushing back against mafia control of the entertainment industry. It became the beginning of the end for mafia control of Las Vegas. But what about Tony Marcello? 3 days after Dean's performance, Tony called Dean on the phone. Dean's hands were shaking when he answered. He expected to hear threats. He expected to hear anger. Instead, Tony said something surprising. "I've been thinking about what you said," Tony told him. "You said real power comes from inside. That real respect is earned, not demanded." Dean didn't know how to respond. "I've been making a lot of money," Tony continued. "I've got power over a lot of people. I've got fear in this city. But what I don't have is respect. Real respect. The kind where someone does something for you because they actually believe in you, not because they're scared." There was a long pause. "You showed me something that night," Tony said. "You showed me what real strength looks like. I've spent my whole life getting people to do what I want through fear. And it worked. It got me money and power. But it didn't get me what you have." "What's that?" Dean asked carefully. "Self-respect," Tony said simply. "The ability to be proud of yourself. To look in the mirror and like the person looking back. That's something I can't buy with money or get through fear." Tony didn't apologize. Men like him didn't apologize. But he also made no more demands of Dean. The threat was gone. More than that, Tony seemed to change. Not completely. He was still a criminal, still running illegal operations. But he stopped trying to control the entertainment industry. He stepped back. He let entertainers be entertainers. Years later, when people would ask Dean Martin about that night, he would tell the story the same way every time. "I was scared," Dean would say. "I was more scared than I'd ever been. That man could have hurt me. He could have ended my career. But I realized something. He could only hurt my body or my career. He couldn't hurt my soul unless I let him. He couldn't take away my self-respect unless I gave it to him." What happened that night became legendary in Hollywood. It became a story that inspired countless people to stand up for themselves. To stand up for what was right, even when it was terrifying. The truth is, Tony Marcello never went to prison for what happened that night. He continued his criminal business for years. But he was never the same man. The confidence that came from making people afraid was gone. He spent his final years, according to those who knew him, thinking about what Dean had said about real power and real respect. The true meaning of strength and dignity. This story teaches us something that we desperately need to remember in our modern world. It teaches us about the difference between power and strength. Power is what you have over others. Asterisk, a mafia boss has power. A boss who threatens employees has power. A person with a gun has power. But power is fragile. It only works as long as people are afraid. The moment someone isn't afraid anymore, the power disappears. Strength is what you have inside yourself. Asterisk, strength is knowing who you are and standing by it, no matter what the cost. Strength is looking someone in the eye and telling them no, even when they can hurt you. Strength is choosing your dignity over your safety. Dean Martin had power. He was famous, successful, wealthy. But more importantly, he had strength. He had the strength to tell a dangerous man no. He had the strength to face the consequences of his actions. He had the strength to choose his self-respect over his fear. And here's what's interesting. The strength turned out to be more powerful than the fear. In our modern world, we often confuse these two things. We think that the person with the most control has the most power. We think that the person who can make others do what they want is the strongest. But that's not true. Real strength comes from within. Real strength comes from knowing yourself and being proud of who you are. Think about the people in your own life that you truly respect. Are they the ones who force you to do things? Are they the ones who threaten you or control you? Or are they the ones who stand by their principles? The ones who are honest, authentic, and true to themselves? Respect isn't something you can demand. You can demand obedience. You can demand fear. But respect? Real respect comes from seeing someone who knows who they are and isn't willing to compromise that for anything. Dean Martin showed something else that night that's worth thinking about. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to play along with a lie. Tony wanted Dean to pretend something that wasn't true, that Tony was responsible for Dean's success. It was a lie. And when Dean refused to tell that lie, he wasn't just refusing to respect someone else. He was respecting himself. We live in a world where we're often asked to compromise. We're asked to go along with things we don't believe in. We're asked to pretend things are true when we know they're false. We're asked to give credit to people who don't deserve it, or to accept blame for things that aren't our fault. Every single time we face that choice, we're facing Dean Martin's choice. Do we choose comfort and safety by going along? Or do we choose dignity and self-respect by standing up? The beautiful thing about Dean's choice was that it didn't just help him. It helped everyone. By refusing to be controlled, he inspired others to refuse as well. By standing up for his own dignity, he helped break the chain of control that had held an entire industry hostage. That's what real strength does. It doesn't just help the person who's being brave. It helps everyone around them. There's also an important lesson about redemption in this story. Tony Marcello was not a good man. He was a criminal. He did terrible things. But when he was confronted with real strength and real integrity, something in him recognized the value of it. It didn't make him good, but it made him better. It made him question his whole approach to life and power. That's something we should remember. Everyone has the capacity to change. Everyone has the capacity to recognize when they're wrong. And sometimes one brave person's example can spark that recognition in someone unexpected. This story also reminds us that dignity cannot be taken from you unless you allow it. Tony tried to take Dean's dignity by asking him to humiliate himself. But Dean refused. He simply refused. And in that refusal, he kept his dignity intact. No one can force you to disrespect yourself. No one can make you ashamed of who you are. The only way that happens is if you accept it. If you agree to it. If you give your permission. Dean Martin understood this. He understood that the only real control anyone has over you is what you let them have. The final lesson from this story is perhaps the most important. Being yourself is more powerful than anything else in the world. Dean Martin was successful because he was authentically himself on stage. His charm, his humor, his talent, all of it came from being genuine. The moment he would have started pretending to be someone Tony wanted him to be, he would have lost the very thing that made him valuable. That's true for all of us. Our value, our real value, comes from being who we actually are. Not from pretending. Not from playing a role for someone else's benefit. When we're genuinely ourselves, we have a power that nothing else can match. So here's the question for you. What are you pretending about? Where are you compromising your dignity to stay safe? What are you giving away that you shouldn't be giving away? Because if Dean Martin could stand up to a mafia boss, surely we can find the courage to be ourselves in our own smaller worlds. To stand up for what we believe in. To refuse to compromise our integrity for comfort. That's the real lesson of this story. That's what made Dean Martin a true legend. Not his talent, though he was incredibly talented, but his courage, his willingness to choose dignity over safety, his refusal to let fear control him. And if you look around your own life, you'll probably find that the people you respect most are the ones who do the same thing. Like and subscribe. You just witnessed one of the greatest stories of courage and dignity ever told. If this story inspired you to stand up for what you believe in, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about real strength and real courage. Comment below and tell us, what would you do in Dean Martin's situation? Have you ever had to choose between safety and dignity? Tell us your story, because your experience might inspire someone else to be brave. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, so you never miss a story about real heroes who refused to compromise who they were. Subscribe now and join a community of people who believe that dignity and self-respect are worth more than anything else in the world.